Welcome to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. Today is Saturday, the 15th of February, 2025. And this program is broadcast from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to all of you. The objective of this channel is to inform and educate our viewers. And I am excited and delighted to be speaking with Mr. Sasha Uzunov, an independent journalist from Melbourne, Australia, and Mr. Viktor Bivell, a publisher and editor from Sydney, Australia. Gentlemen, a special welcome to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska.
Thank you.
Hello to you both.
Welcome.
Thank you. This is the first occasion at which we are going to speak with Sasha Uzunov, and I'd like to start with this interview, if I may, with you.
Sure.
So, Sasha, tell us about who you are and what you do. Where do you come from?
Well, I'm born and raised in Melbourne, Australia. My parents are Macedonians. I've been in journalism in one shape or form for about close to 40 odd years. I have a degree in journalism from RMIT here in Melbourne, the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. I've worked in sort of various fields in journalism. I've covered wars. I've reported from Afghanistan, Iraq. I've lived in Macedonia and in the Balkans. I've covered that for about 30 odd years. I have an interest in international affairs, culture, sports, politics, Macedonia, obviously. So I sort of have a variety of interests as a journalist.
You also have a blog.
That's right. Yes, it's called alternatecomms.com. And I've been running that for a number of years. Before that, I had another blog, which is still running, called Team Uzunov. And on there is my years of work, my articles, videos, etc., etc.
How was it that you became interested in journalism, Sasha?
Well, look, I've always had a curiosity about the world and international affairs, and I've always had a passion for writing. So all of those things sort of came together in the sort of profession of journalism for me. I've also had a sense of adventure. I wanted to do some travel, and journalism sort of allowed me to do that.
Your blog, what are the topics that you cover?
Well, basically, almost anything. I mean, international affairs, Australian culture, events in Macedonia, the Balkans. I've even written a psychological analysis explaining the popularity of Donald Trump in Australia, Trump mania. Likening it to Beatlemania in the 1960s. So almost anything. I mean, with the exception of science and sort of economics, I'm not an expert in those fields, but I do have an interest in both. But I've mainly stuck to sort of international and local affairs, politics, culture.
You mentioned before that you worked in Europe. In what capacity?
Well, I started off as a young correspondent for a news agency called MILS, the Macedonian Information and Liaison Service, which was financed through public donations here in Australia. And I spent 3 months in Brussels, Belgium, and then 3 months in Skopje, Macedonia, working in their offices. Writing stories, gathering information. The agency that I worked for, Mills, had a lot of subscribers, usually international agencies, foreign embassies. I mean, we had the US Embassy, we had the Australian Embassy, French, Italian, Israeli Embassy. I I've sort of lost count as to how many countries were excuse me, who were subscribers to these news agencies. So that's how I got my start in international affairs. I've done sort of freelance work for mainstream, what we call sort of legacy media. I've written op-eds, opinion pieces for some Australian newspapers, mainly on defence and national security issues.
Thank you, Sasha. And your interest in the Macedonian question, or the Macedonian people, or the Macedonian politics that you've been covering for so many years, you have gathered, I understand, a lot of facts. And I wish to remind viewers that journalists are interested in facts and the truth, not hearsay, not propaganda coming from government or elsewhere. We are interested in facts and the truth. So you have revealed a lot of truths, I can imagine, during your work in Europe, but also here. And I'm looking forward to you talking about some of those things, so that our viewers can also be informed about your work. Please feel free.
Sure. Look, I have an interesting professional background. I mean, when I graduated from RMIT in journalism, I got a traineeship as a library technician at Melbourne University for about 4, 5, 6 months, and I would study 2 days a week at Swinburne Institute of TAFE, and then I would work 3 days at Melbourne University, the then law library. I also worked in the Baillieu, their main Baillieu library, and so getting these sort of library skills, taught me how to sort of research archives. I became sort of proficient in looking for information, knowing where to go. So since that time. I've continually check archives. I mean, I'm a big fan of the National Archives of Australia. I subscribe to various newspaper archives. I subscribe to Ancestry.com. That's a very useful research tool. I go through the United States Library of Congress website. They have an archive on old newspapers. I go through British newspaper archives. Whatever I can sort of get my hands on in terms of archives, research materials, what's known as sort of primary evidence or first-hand evidence. Usually government reports, eyewitness accounts, rather than just basing things on on sort of conspiracy theories. Actually trying to locate documents. And there have been some incredible discoveries along the way. Documents, reinforcing, confirming, affirming the existence of Macedonians before that magical date of 1944, when Greek and Bulgarian and Serb nationalists claimed that Tito pulled us out of a magic hat and then created us out of thin air.
Thank you. You have indeed revealed some facts and truths, and in particular about the Prespa Agreement, that there's a lot of reflection on this document, signed by the Republic of Macedonia and the Republic of, what do they call them? The Hellenic Republic, I think its proper name is. And I'm interested, and I think our viewers would be interested to find out some of those facts and truths that you've been able to find through correspondences between different people and organizations, that confirm your understanding and your view that this so-called Prespa Agreement was perhaps, and these are my words now, signed under duress, and that it is illegal and unlawful. Something about which Professor Igoryanev has written extensively, and I have also covered in my YouTube channel, In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. So in recent days, you've revealed for us information that certainly I myself have not come across regarding the connections that took place and the actions and activities that took place that were instrumental in bringing this, or even writing the actual Prespa Agreement. Who wrote the Prespa Agreement? It's a question that I have been asking myself. Who wrote this? Because I've gone through it thoroughly, and the analysis from Professor Igoryanov, I've gone through that thoroughly. And my question is, who wrote this document? Certainly, the people who were involved on the Macedonian side were not quite literate in the English language. That is a fact. Okay, nor were they diplomats in a sense. They didn't know what was going on. They just simply, put their signatures on the paper, even those who put the signature have done so illegally, because they're not, under the Macedonian constitution, permitted to sign documents of that nature. Nevertheless, such a document exists. So I am now looking forward to listening to you share with us what it is that you have been able to reveal for our listeners about this document, to add to the body of work that we already have, which is quite credible.
Well, look, thank you. Let me sort of set the groundwork for my response. Obviously, Professor Igoryanov has done some fantastic, groundbreaking work in analysing and sort of dissecting the Prespa Agreement. I also want to mention Professor Silvana Pavlovska as well in her sort of
yes, indeed, yes,
research abilities and analysis and so forth. Where I sort of come into it is more of a sort of journalistic and sort of political angle, not so much as the sort of the sort of technicalities or the legalities of it. I mean, as to who actually physically wrote it, I mean, to me, from what I can gather from the available information, it's largely circumstantial. I have to let the viewers and listeners know it's largely circumstantial. But obviously, the people who technically, mechanically wrote it were people with who are high level, very professional lawyers who understand international law. Obviously, understand English properly, etc., etc. So the actual people who wrote it is not that important. It's the people who stand behind it,
yes,
who ordered it to be imposed upon Macedonia. That's what, for me, is of interest. Now, there is no physical smoking gun as such, to use a popular American phrase. There is no one bit of information that says so and so. But when you sort of put together the available circumstantial evidence and you follow it, then it leads you to a particular direction and inescapable conclusion. Now, first and foremost, we have to determine who benefits from it and why, wherefore, etc., etc. Now, the most obvious answer is the United States, because Greece has been and is the US's long-term strategic partner.
Yes.
Proxy has been since the Greek Civil War, when the US took over from the British Empire, which could no longer financially support Greece. The United States helped Greece, the monarchist side, defeat the left-wing forces during the Greek Civil War. The US installed a right-wing military dictatorship in 1967, which eventually fell in 1974 after Cyprus. So the country that stands behind the Prespa Agreement is the United States, as well as the United Kingdom, which has been Greece's traditional patron supporter.
Yes.
Now, from what I can gather and sort of following sort of the footsteps and evidence that's been left. It's like when you're sort of walking through a forest and you're sort of seeing bits of footprint here and sort of disturbed leaves here, a broken branch here, and you sort of keep on following, even though there's nothing, 100%, but you keep on following this trail until you sort of reach a particular spot, and then you sort of come to a reasonable, logical conclusion. And from what I've been able to gather, it points to a number of individuals, one in particular, a high-ranking US diplomat called Dr. Amanda Slout, who was with the Brookings Institute, a US think tank in the US. Before that, she was involved in resolving the Northern Ireland troubles. She was she made her name in somehow resolving this sort of complicated issue between Irish Republicans and the British government in Northern Ireland. Without sort of going into too much detail, there was
Yes.
30-odd year guerrilla insurgency war, or the British would say terrorist activities. She and others, were able to sort of bring this to an end. So she has this high level of expertise, and she would have had the resources to research the sort of critical issues that touch upon Macedonian identity. Now, the Prespa Agreement, like I said, without going into enormous detail, because experts such as Professor Yanev and Professor Vankovska have sort of taken it apart piece by piece. But in essence, it's an extraordinary kind of social engineering where it forbids Macedonians from examining their own history. I mean, if you claim to have some kind of link to ancient Macedonia, I personally, I'm not necessarily pushing for one. I mean, I'm not opposed to having a link to ancient Macedonia, but it's not necessarily relevant to the issue. It's more of a red herring. But the point is, by confining what Macedonians can claim as theirs and what they are allowed to, tells you a deliberate social engineering. And to back this up, there is a presidential executive order which was signed by outgoing US President Joe Biden, which places sanctions on people who question the Prespa Agreement or undermine
Yes, that's
undermine
right.
the Prespa Agreement. Right now, in practical terms, it's a sort of loose catch-all, definition. I mean, but by simply just exercising free speech. I mean, the US has its First Amendment, which guarantees free speech. By simply just, saying, well, we have a link to ancient Macedonia, that could technically be construed as undermining the Prespa Agreement. And you could theoretically or hypothetically be placed on a US blacklist. I mean, it shows the absurdity of this agreement, and its long-term ramifications. Now, the knock-on effect of the Prespa Agreement is that other countries, other neighbouring countries, which have had traditional hostile relations with Macedonia, such as Bulgaria, and I mean to a lesser extent Serbia. Serbia sort of kept its sort of nose clean for the time being. It's got its own issues.
Yeah.
And obviously Albanian, right-wing nationalists, they've watched from the sidelines, and they've seen how Macedonia has been taken apart and has given into all these sort of outrageous demands. It comes as no great surprise that Bulgaria is making its list of blackmail on Macedonia. I mean, it's extortion. That's how I would define it, pure and simple. There's nothing reasonable in Bulgaria's demands, and on top of the Prespa Agreement, we have other agreements that were imposed upon Macedonia by the US. The 2001 Ohrid Framework Agreement.
Yes.
As a consequence of a war that the US to some extent, either wittingly or unwittingly unleashed in Macedonia, because the so-called KLA franchise, the NLA led by Ali Ahmeti, were trained by the CIA. They were trained by the US. Again, these are well-known facts. There's nothing secretive about this. And through this war, they were installed as US proxies in Macedonia, and this agreement, which in effect, de facto federalizes Macedonia, turns it into a binational state, and makes it deliberately dysfunctional. Again, this is a deliberate US, deep state strategy in Macedonia, and on top of that, we have a template that's out there in the public. I mean, in 2017 or 2018, if I remember correctly, a US expert called Professor Daniel Serwer was called to testify in the US Congress about security issues and stability in the Balkans, and in a sort of hypothetical worst case scenario. Now, he may not have necessarily wanted this to happen, but he presented it as a worst case scenario, and he said that if nation state building in Macedonia fails, then an option could be for either the US or EU or European forces to come in militarily, occupy the country for a lengthy period of time, and then partition it. Obviously, a large slice being given to a greater Albania entity, and then whatever remains. And he was being disingenuous when he said that whatever is left, then the people could decide who they sort of then joined up with, which in effect means Bulgaria, right? So that's already there on the table, and we know that Macedonia is deliberately dysfunctional, and because the US has made it dysfunctional. So any attempt at nation building, is going to meet with failure.
Thank you. Let's have a short music break, and then we'll come to Viktor Bivell. Thank you. Welcome back to In Focus, Viktor Bivell. We did an interview some 4 or 5 years ago, as I recall, last time, and I'm delighted to have you join me and Sasha today. So welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you kindly please tell us something about yourself, your background? That is, were you born in Australia of Macedonian parents, or where do the parents come from? And how is it that you came to be involved in journalism and later on in publishing and editing? And by the way, mentioning your company, Politicon, am I correct? Yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, look, thank you. Yeah, look, I was born in Manjimup in Western Australia, and I grew up in Perth.
Could you speak up a little bit for me, please?
Yes, I was born in Manjimup in Western Australia, and I grew up in Perth. My parents are from Aegean Macedonia, so so-called Greek Macedonia, and I came to Sydney a long time ago when I was 26. I don't want to say, but it was 41 years ago. So I've been in Sydney a long time. Look, I studied English. My degree is in English. And when I was growing up, books and reading and writing were a very important part of my life and still are. And the reason I came to Sydney, or I ended up staying in Sydney, was because it offered a lot of job opportunities in editing and journalism and publishing, and I was lucky enough after some time to get one of those, which got me started. So I started as a professional life as an editor, and and then that was in 1987, and then in 1992 I left my day job and started my own publishing business, Politicon. So over my career, the first 5 years as an employee, as an editor, I was editing an Australian manufacturing magazine, engineering magazine. Then when I started my business, I started a venture capital and private equity magazine, which I did for 15 years and was fortunate enough to be able to sell. And then I also started an environmental investment magazine, which I also did for 15 years. So I'm now retired, but I started publishing Macedonian books in 1992 with when I started Politicon, and I still do that. So that's my retirement activity. And very pleased to say yesterday I uploaded my 16th book, brand new book.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And by an Australian author from whose background is from Aegean Macedonia. So
what's the title?
Yeah, the title is called An Aussie in a Parallel Universe. And it's written by Manoli Gurmanchev, and it's Manoli's second book. His first book, which I published a few years ago, was My Childhood Memories from a Shepherd to a Chemical Engineer. So both very, very good books. The first one about his childhood and his love of engineering and learning, coming to Australia and becoming a chemical engineer, and then later a maths teacher. And this second book, An Aussie in a Parallel Universe, starts off with him coming to Australia as a young boy and the parallel universe of being an immigrant child, not able to speak the language and gradually learning. And it's his journey through Australian culture, through learning, which he has a childhood love of, and through the education system, because he became a maths teacher. And so it's really just a series of anecdotes, many of them quite humorous, all of them interesting, about his journey through learning and teaching. So great book, and it's available for free on the politicon.com.
It's available for
free download.
Free.
Yeah. Well, a few years ago, I made the decision that unfortunately, and much to my regret, there was really not any money in publishing Macedonian books. So I decided, but I still wanted to keep publishing. So I decided that I could get more bang for my lack of buck by getting into free ebooks. So I'll be about probably over 10 years ago now, around 10 years ago, I made that decision. And since then, I've created the Politicon free ebooks library, which now has well over 500 free ebooks for downloading, all of them about politics, language, history, culture, with a strong focus on the Aegean side, where my family and relatives come from.
You also publish a newsletter, and anyone can subscribe to your newsletter and learn about the publications that are available on Politicon.
Yeah, look, it's the Politicon update, which I publish every 6 months. And that's really just a synopsis of the new material on the website. It is a very big website. I mean, the over 500 free ebooks is just one section of it. There's plenty of other sections as well. There's a lot of information there. So the update is really just to inform people who are interested about what's new on the website. So yeah, and people can just get on the website and sign up for it. And I'm happy to add them to the list and send them the update every 6 months.
Before you retired, it doesn't sound to me that you are retired. You're still producing and working hard. But you used to travel extensively and also give presentations in other parts of the world. What were those mostly about?
I wish I had travelled extensively, as you suggest there. Look, I have done a few overseas trips as an editor and a speaker. I've been lucky enough in my day job. I've been to Germany for an exhibition there. I've presented a paper in Brazil. I've been in New Zealand and around Australia. But on the Macedonian side, look, I did present at a UMD conference in Washington, and that was a great experience as well. So yeah, I've done some professional traveling, but of course not as much as I would like. Yeah.
Did you travel to Macedonia, and in particular to Aegean Macedonia?
Yeah, look, I've been to Macedonia quite a few times, always on a private basis. I've been, and I have been to Aegean Macedonia. The first time, so-called legally, in 1988, when they allowed me in. But then once I started publishing Macedonian books, I ended up on the Greek blacklist. And so I have been, in 1990, on my honeymoon, we were in Macedonia and we wanted to go across the border to Greece, and I was denied entry on my honeymoon.
What was the reasoning behind it?
Well, they don't give you a reason. They just tell you. It's just a
You are an undesirable person?
Well, they just say you're on the list, you can't come in. They don't tell you why. Or, I've tried to investigate why. I've never got a straight answer, but you can work it out.
Yes, you can work it out indeed.
You just have to look at the list of people who they do ban, and it's and a lot of them, including professors and very credible people who just have a contrary narrative to what the Greek narrative is about Macedonia. So, that's my job as a journalist, as an editor and publisher, is to tell the Macedonian side of the story. And if the Greek government doesn't like it, bad luck. Simple as that. So, yeah, look, I have been back a few times since then. I unofficially, they don't know. I go in there quietly as a private citizen. I do my private business, meet the people I want to meet with, my relatives, and I come out again. I cause no trouble. I mean, no trouble. I never have. But, for whatever reason, that's the way the Greek government chooses to look at it, and they get away with it because no one, none of their so-called Western friends put them under any pressure about it. And of course, we're talking about the US and the EU and other people, they let Greece get away with all these inhuman and inhumane and ethnic cleansing type activities. And so as a job, as a journalist, as a publisher, I see it as my role to expose that.
To expose, yes.
From the point of view of not just showing something that's wrong, but also telling it from the Macedonian side of the story. And that's why, my first book in 1992 that I published was by the Association of Refugee Children in Poland, and they were child refugees. So the first book I published was about the child refugees. I've published a number of books since then about them, but that's only one side of it. It's a huge story. It's not all been uncovered. It's not all been told. There are
no, it hasn't. It's yet to be revealed. A lot more.
So much more to be told.
So much more, yes. So much more. Not just amongst our people in the diaspora, but also to our people in Macedonia itself. They seem to have been in the dark for so many years. Yeah. Recently, yes.
Well, I was going to say, many people know about it and many people don't. And you can say the same about the West. Some people in the West know about it, but a great majority of people, and including influential people, don't, which is one of the reasons I publish in English, is because not just because my degree was in English and that's, what I'm fluent in, but it also has the political objective of making it known to a much wider audience.
Yes.
And having it for free on the website means that anyone who's interested can access it immediately.
Yes. Last year, we saw a new government, a new political party lead the government in the form of Vmro de PMN and Mr. Christian Mucunski as the prime minister of the country. It's not quite a year since they came back into power after many, many years of absence and all sorts of difficulties that they had faced as a result of certain activities going on from other foreign entities. We were witness to a representative from the current government recently in Australia, and that was Mr. Timothy or Timto Mucunski, who is the Minister for Foreign Affairs. After many years of no visits from the Republic of Macedonia, we had the visit from the minister. And I understand there's been quite a bit of controversy about his visit. Allegedly, not many people were informed about his visit and about the purpose of his visit. I understand that Mr. Mucunski met with certain Macedonian communities and privately with individuals in Sydney and then in Melbourne. You yourself, Viktor, I understand, were invited to the event in Sydney. Tell us about your impressions, please.
Yeah, look, my impressions were positive, very positive. Just to be clear, look, his visit was publicised in the Macedonian newspapers today, Dennis, in Australian and Macedonian Weekly. So, you know, certainly wasn't a secretive visit. And I believe ostensibly the principal reason for the visit was the 25th anniversary of the signing of diplomatic relations between Australia and Macedonia. So I believe that he did meet with the Australian Foreign Minister. In terms of the meeting itself, look, I thought it was positive for a number of reasons. Look, it was good that he came out. As you said, the previous government totally neglected the diaspora, particularly the diaspora in Australia. And they were very unpopular government as well. So perhaps, you know, it was sensible, perhaps in some ways, that they didn't come out. It was certainly cowardly, but, you know, from their point of view, I guess they had little to gain, you know, if they were going to get a very negative response, which I believe they probably would have. So it's good that with the change of government, the new foreign minister has come out and re-established those links that were there before when Bivell was previously in power, and the premier Nikola Gruevski and the foreign minister Antonio Milošovski both came out. And I remember that visit as well. So yes, very positive that they came out. It was very well attended in Sydney. It was, you know, it was a large reception hall, and there were, you know, plenty of Macedonians there, and also a very large number of, you know, so-called dignitaries, as
Yes.
they call themselves, dignitaries being other
Mm-hmm.
politicians and people in, you know, power. But that was good. You know, that shows that the organisers did their work and did their homework, and, you know, were able to maximise the number of people that the foreign minister was able to meet, and the impact. So that's good. So yeah, there was, you know, a member from federal parliament, state parliament, and a lot, you know, of recently elected Macedonian councillors who were elected in the last series of council elections last year. And it was great to see so many Macedonians getting involved and being successful in getting council positions. So that was very positive as well. He gave a speech. Look, he speaks very good English. He grew up in Canada, he said. So great to have a Macedonian politician fluent in English, which I think is obviously very useful on the international stage as well. And I guess the key takeaways for me were that he said it has been 15 years since the last visit by a foreign minister. So that's a big step forward. And then he did say, you know, the sort of things you would expect, but it was good that he did say them, that he wants to build bridges with the diaspora in Australia, which is obviously, you know, should always be the case with any government in Macedonia, and was certainly not the case with the previous CDS government. So that's a step forward. He said he wants to encourage investment, which again should always be the concern of the Macedonian government, and wasn't and hasn't been under the previous government. So we'll wait to see, you know, what initiatives may come there. hopefully there will be some initiatives, and there are some issues there, particularly with the investors in Australia. I was hoping to have an opportunity to discuss those, which I didn't get, but I'm sure, or I hope other people did, and I'm sure he would be well aware of those problems. And the other takeaway was that he said there's a chance that the Macedonian Premier, Prime Minister, may come out to Australia next year, which again would be a huge steps forward. So let's hope that happens. So presumably, I'm not a diplomat. I presume when these things are afoot, they send out their foreign minister or someone from the department to lay the groundwork.
Yes.
So hopefully a little, some of that groundwork was done, and hopefully the visit will happen next year. So yeah, overall, it was from those points of view, very positive.
Thank you. Sasha Uzunov, if I
Yes.
may turn to you
Well,
now.
look,
What's your take on the visit by Foreign Minister from the Republic of Macedonia,
look,
Mr. Timothy
you've put me
Mucunski?
on the spot. You've put me on the spot here. I mean, after Vic's sort of fantastic response, I sort of feel guilty in being skeptical. But look,
You're a
on
journalist,
the,
aren't you?
yeah,
Were
I
you
mean,
were you
I'm a journalist.
invited? Did
No,
you
no, no.
attend? Did you
I'm
meet?
in Melbourne. I'm in Melbourne. So, but look, it's not relevant whether I'm invited or not. But the point is, look, on on the positive side, he's a young, mild-mannered man from what I can see, and he's not unlike the predecessor foreign minister, Mr. Buyer Osmani, who's a right-wing Albanian neo-Nazi extremist.
Yes.
Young Timothy Mucunski, is mild-mannered. Doesn't have that sort of extremist ideology. But like I said, I'm more skeptical as to his visit. Look, I mean, he's young. He doesn't really have that much, foreign affairs experience. I mean, he's what, 35 years old. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's going up against, foreign ministers who I would call old wolves. I mean,
Mm.
he has to take on the likes of the Greeks or the Bulgarians or whoever, or the British or the Americans, etc., etc. I mean, in a comparison, I mean, if you look at Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, I mean, he's in his
Yes.
70s, but
Yes.
he's been foreign minister for over 20 years, and you know whether you love or hate Russia, no one has been able to sort of put one past him, So that's sort of the caliber of foreign minister you need. And now he's young, and we have to sort of question, why has someone so young and without any experience in foreign affairs been placed as Macedonia's foreign minister? And um, from what I can gather, excuse me, from what I can gather, I mean, he's just simply repeating talking points given to him by the U.S. Embassy in Macedonia. I mean, he talks about Macedonia being a strategic partner of the U.S. I mean, look, on paper, that might be the case, but in reality, when you're looking at agreements or treaties or whatever between nation states,
Yes.
you have to look beyond just what's on the surface. You have to look at the reality, and the reality is that Macedonia doesn't have a strategic partnership with the US. It has a master servant relationship with the
Yes.
US. The US determines Macedonia's foreign policy. It's why Macedonia's name was changed, why the country is deliberately dysfunctional, why right-wing Albanian neo-Nazi extremists were installed by the US. I mean, you know, uh, these extremists openly glorify World War II Albanian Nazi collaborators. They regard people like Jem Hasa Gostavari and Akif Rachani, who were murdering Macedonians, who were killing Albanians during World War II, who were working for fascist Italy, for Nazi Germany, and who were working with a man called Jafer Deva, who was a high-ranking Albanian Nazi Quisling involved in the deportation of Kosovo Jews to the death camps. These are the extremists who the US installed in Macedonia. I mean, even in Germany, the birthplace of Nazism, Nazi statues are banned. You can't build a statue to the SS or the Gestapo or to Hitler or Himmler or Goering or whatever. But in Macedonia, there are World War II Albanian Nazi collaborator statues. I mean, this is disgraceful. This is something that has happened because of the US. The US has allowed these extremists, in effect, to run the country. So whatever Foreign Minister Mucunski sort of says, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because he doesn't determine, his government doesn't determine Macedonia's foreign policy. Now, I personally would like to see him, do some pushback. I mean, he's a foreign minister. Do we know? I mean, again, what did he discuss whilst he was here, besides sort of the basic talking points, right? Were the issues relating to Social Security. Apparently, there are some sort of controversies relating to pensions being paid to Macedonians abroad. There's some difficulties. I mean, did he discuss that? Did he seek to assist? We simply don't know. I mean, was he here to somehow, convince us or the government to change the name of our community from the Australian Macedonian to the North Macedonian community? We don't know. I mean, he may have sort of mouthed platitudes and say, look, he's Macedonian, he supports Macedonia. Again, we don't know whether this issue was broached. Now, speaking of Macedonia's prime minister, he was in the US for US President Trump's inauguration. I mean, do we know if the prime minister of Macedonia, Mr. Mucunski, even met Donald Trump or even high-ranking officials of Donald Trump and asked, could the US, allow Macedonia to get rid of the Prespa Agreement? Did he ask, can Macedonia go back to having its old name? Its real name, the Republic of Macedonia.
It's true.
Again, we don't know. Everything is sort of. Look, I understand the need for discretion in diplomacy. You don't reveal everything. At the when you're playing at the diplomatic poker table, you don't reveal all your cards at once. You sort of keep your aces, close to your chest, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the government of Macedonia going along and saying, look, we can't change Prespa and we have to accept it. I mean, for me, that's a poor excuse, because I mean, if you look at, say, Greece, if the US pushed a policy that was anti-Greek, right? The Greeks would move heaven and earth to change it, even though, Greece has been one of the US's long-term proxies. There used to be 3 or 4 US military bases in Greece. There's now just the one large naval base on Crete, which NATO and the US need and use to police the Mediterranean region. But Greece would move heaven and earth and lobby the US to change its foreign policy, but still remain loyal to the US. The way I see our foreign minister, behaving is that it's surrender. We can't do anything. We'll just go along with it and hope for the best. I mean, that's not a strategy, And the way I see it is, if something isn't done, the country, Macedonia, doesn't have a long-term future. It will. I hate to say this, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. The country will be partitioned. That 2017-2018 template that I mentioned by Professor Daniel Serwer earlier on about partition of Macedonia because it's dysfunctional,
it will eventually
become reality.
Yeah,
will become reality. So the government of Macedonia needs to take action. It can't just say, okay, we give up and we'll just sort of, hope for the best. There has to be some kind of strategy. There has to be some kind of pushback. I understand that, I'm not saying that, the government needs to sort of kick the Americans out, because if they did that, there would be a coup in Macedonia. Let's be brutally honest. The US would destroy Macedonia within 5 minutes.
They tried many years ago and they wouldn't
Right.
leave the country. So yes, they're
So,
there.
so my point is that working within the system, in trying to convince the US, trying to sort of lobby the US, rather than sort of just throwing the US out and kicking it out, because that's counterproductive, right? But to somehow lobby the US government and make them see reason that what they're asking of Macedonia is suicide. Country will not withstand this. We're seeing, Albanian nationalist groups in Macedonia, whether they're Ali Ahmeti's right-wing Albanian neo-Nazi extremists who are now in opposition, or these sort of so-called moderate, Albanian nationalists that are in the coalition government with Prime Minister Mucunski's Vamoro Dopamane. Their demands are the same as also. I mean, some of the comments are blatantly racist against Macedonians. Sort of calling, name calling, etc., etc. So something needs to be done. There has to be some kind of pushback. But within the system, that I'm a political realist. I understand. I'm a man in my 50s. I'm not advocating violence or revolution. I'm advocating peaceful, moderate pushback within the system. Lobbying the US government to and hopefully there's now a slight door of opportunity, a window of opportunity, there, and it should be taken advantage of. I mean, look, it may not even work. US President Trump may not even couldn't care less. But if you don't ask, you won't know.
Indeed, indeed. Yes, thank you, Sasha. I now want to ask both of you, is there a role for the diaspora, for us in Australia and elsewhere, wherever we are in the world, that we can play to perhaps help the Macedonian government and the people back in Macedonia to get the confidence to take action? As you say, unless you try, you won't know. And there's always, in my view, there should be an opportunity for change. There can be change. It's been stagnant for many, many years. And what the people and the country went through during the Sama-led government and the Albanian, who were calling the Albanian party calling the shots. What can we do? How can we assist in any way, other than, we do contribute financially. That is a fact. We contribute financially in the way of our people visiting relatives, going on holidays there, going back home. So there is a large contribution of money coming into Macedonia. But this is a burning question. A country being made to, or forcefully to change its name to appease another country that is aligned with the USA or a proxy of USA, without the concern of the people of Macedonia, the ancient people of Macedonia, and the propaganda that's being dished out on the part of the parties in Macedonia and other groups, non-government and all USAID and all sorts of other entities that are involved in causing divisions and problems. What can we do? Because we live in Western world countries. Yeah, Victor, you were born in WA. Sasha, remind me, please, were you born here too?
Born in Melbourne, Australia, yes.
You were born. I was born in Skopje, in Macedonia. But we've been here for a long, long time. So we understand the Western world culture and politics, yes, and foreign policy. We are able to exist in these countries and we know the truth. And our hearts are in pain because of what's going on in Macedonia. What can we do? Is there
We can
anything
do,
we can do?
yeah, look, we can do a
Speak
lot.
up for me, please.
Yeah, we can do a lot. There's a huge amount of things that the diaspora can do, but also it needs to be tempered with a bit of realpolitik, what's possible and what's not. So let me just look briefly at both of those. In terms of what we can do, yeah, look, financially, you mentioned that obviously the diaspora is a huge contributor to the Macedonian economy through holidays and travel and remittances to relatives and so on. But that's not going to buy you influence. What's going to buy you influence is having a big checkbook. What the diaspora hasn't done, which I'd like to see done, is if there were people who are financially savvy, which there are in the finance industry, who could organise, various funds, the raising of funds in the diaspora, and then target those funds for projects in Macedonia, much like at the when the earthquake happened in Skopje, there were massive donations by the diaspora around the world, and they were obviously appreciated and they were able to help rebuild Skopje. And I know, around the time of the end of the Second World War and the Greek Civil War, the diaspora in Australia made contributions, collected money to help build hospitals, hospital in Macedonia. So that sort of thing. When someone goes to Macedonia with a checkbook and says, I've got X amount of money, let's talk realistic money, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, people are going to listen, and that will buy you influence. Now, I agree with what Sasha said about the US has a huge amount of influence in Macedonia, and not all of it is good. But what's behind that influence? It's not just the military, it's also the money. America can buy that influence, not just in Macedonia, but around the world. So if the diaspora is serious about having influence, it's not enough just to throw out ideas, or my political idea is better than your political idea. That's what Parliament's for. Get in Parliament if you want to have that discussion. If you want to make serious changes on the ground, get a checkbook. Go to Macedonia with 10 million bucks and say, I want to build a bridge, I want to build a hospital, I want to start a foundation for children, I want to do something on this political issue, and then people will listen to you. So that you buy influence that way. Otherwise, you're just another person with good ideas. Well, I get good ideas all the time. People contact, oh, Victor, how about a book on this? Great. Why don't you write it? I say to them, when you've written it, then come and see me, Don't give me an idea of, what Bob Dylan said, I've got a head full of ideas, So if you want influence in Macedonia, go there with a checkbook, So what else can the diaspora do? Go there more often, visit more often, buy property there,
Yes.
Go and live there if you can, What Macedonia needs is more people. And this is the other thing I wanted to say about influence, Macedonia, 2 million people, we're tiny, Greece is 5 times bigger, and Bulgaria as well. Of course, Greece and Bulgaria are going to have more political power on the world stage than we are. And Macedonia is easy to push around, by Greece and Bulgaria and the US. But there's always a master, as Bob Dylan said, you got to serve someone. So we're little, we serve bigger people. But when you look at the bigger countries, look at Ukraine, what was it, about 30 plus, 35 million people? Russia tried to influence its foreign policy. When it failed, it went in with the army, So, you either accept the word or you accept the army. Ditto with the Kurds,
Yeah.
Was it 40 million people divided between Syria, Turkey, Iran and Iraq? 40 million people being pushed around and still don't have a homeland, So I think when I'm saying let's talk realpolitik, let's be realistic. There are things you can change and ask for, and things, that are probably you're never going to get, even though you really want them. So, as a small country, where every small country is going to be pushed around, and even big countries are pushed around. So, I think, the key there is maybe, pick what you really want carefully and
Be
focus your
selective.
energy on that. I mean, Sasha said that, Greece would move heaven and earth for its foreign policy. Well, it did, and the result was the name change in Macedonia. It took them, what, 30 years or, and massive amount of lobbying, but, it's a lesson in sticking to your guns,
Yes.
and unfortunately for us, so they did have to move heaven and earth to get what they wanted. So yeah, that's what's involved if you want those sort of political changes. Just saying you want it is not enough, and just being disappointed about it is not enough, and being disappointed and withdrawing from the community is totally the wrong attitude. Yeah, get your long wish list, then cut it down to a more serious,
Prioritize.
doable list, and then even then you've got to work your way through systematically.
It takes time, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So
Sasha?
that's what foreign ministers and prime ministers are for. And
Sasha?
yeah, the new Macedonian foreign minister is young, but he has been mayor in Skopje, and he has got that international experience with Canada. He's certainly presented very well, and if he hangs around long enough, he'll be like Lavrov, So
yeah, he may be a quick learner. Sasha, what's your take?
Look, I agree with Vic 100%. He's on the money. I mean, no pun intended. But I mean, the only thing I would add is if you're passionate about Macedonia and you may not necessarily have family. I mean, you may have been out of the country. You're maybe fourth or fifth generation. You've sort of lost that direct link, a physical link to Macedonia. Why not adopt a Macedonian family? I mean, I think it's a program worth examining where people in the diaspora in Australia, adopt a family. I mean, you know how you have these sort of charities internationally who sponsor children, or families in Africa or something. Why not sponsor a Macedonian family? I mean, if you're in Australia, you're on your own, or you're wealthy and you don't have any kids or something. Why not sponsor be paired off with a Macedonian family? Mother, father, kids. Send them some money once a month or something. I mean that's worth considering. But getting back to what Vic said, I mean he's spot on. I mean his analysis is absolutely correct. I can't disagree with it.
Thank you. Is there anything else you wish to add before we end this interview today? Victor?
Look, Macedonia is an endless topic, so there's a million things that could be
An
said.
endless story.
None of which we have time to talk about.
A timeless story.
It is.
Yes, there is a lot to talk about, and I look forward to our next interview in the not too distant future. Those of you listening to us today to the YouTube channel In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska, reminding you we've been speaking with Viktor Bivell, publisher editor, Sasha Uzunov, independent journalist, and myself, Silvana Pavlovska, another independent journalist. Please visit politicon.com. Was it politicon.com.au or just .com?
No, politicon.com.
Politicon.com, so that you can keep abreast with all the publications that are listed there. And as Victor mentioned earlier, many of which are free. They're ebook, they're free, they're in English, and easily accessible. And with Sasha Uzunov, your blog, please mention the name of your blog again.
Alternatecoms.com.
Alternatecoms.com.
Just Google search it, you'll find it, and most of my columns are on that blog.
Indeed. So all of you out there who are interested in the juicy stories of what was going on, who, whether it was, what was the name of that woman, the one who worked in Ireland, Sloan, I think you mentioned, wasn't it?
Amanda Sloat, Dr.
Amanda Sloat, and many others, whether it's Ambassador Bailey or many others involved in all these cooking up of things. Please don't bypass Sasha Uzunov's blog. And stay tuned for my program, of course, In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska, where you will find so many videos on the history, the Macedonian question. What is it? We've got Viktor, thank you for including us in your newsletter where you state there are indeed over 300 short videos on YouTube. Many are on the Macedonian question, many are in English as well, and the current political issues. And one of those is, of course, on the Prespa Agreement, where we have reproduced, with permission from Professor Dr. Igor Yanev, we've reproduced his publication where he analyzes in full the Prespa Agreement and what it means to us, and also he's providing solutions, what can be done. So perhaps this is an opportunity to, if we are seen by Prime Minister Christian Mucunski or any of his ministers, please do read the Professor Igor's publication. It will give you lots of answers there, and there is no need not to have confidence. Things can be done, and people expect that of you in Macedonia, and they also expect of you in the diaspora. Indeed. So thank you for watching us. Thank you for being here. A special thank you to Viktor and you, Sasha. It's been a privilege and an honor to speak to you both, and I look forward to again having a conversation about other things that we weren't able to cover today. Thank you so much. We'll play a little bit of music to end our program. Wishing you both a fabulous day. Looking forward to seeing you again. And to our listeners, thank you once again. And bye-bye.
Thank you, Silvana.
Thanks,
Sasha.